Hello and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today we are talking about all of the classic authors I want to read to zero. So when I was making my journal for my reading journal, my new reading journal that I'm starting this year in 2024, I decided to be very intentional about a goal that was sort of previously kind of a mental half-baked goal in my mind of reading to zero certain of my favorite classic authors. And these are authors I'd already kind of started doing that. I kind of already had a sort of goal, but I decided to be very intentional about it. And so for each of these authors, I made a list of all of their works that I wanted to read. And in order for me to be able to say, I have read all of their novels. I don't believe that I have yet read any classic author to zero yet, but I've come really close. By some people's definition, I have with some of these authors that I'm going to tell you about today. But according to my list that I made in my reading journal, I still have a little bit left for a few. Let's start with my favorite, of course. Gotta start it out right. And that is, let's hear it, folks. Who am I thinking of? Oh, yes, Jane Austen. Now, you are probably thinking, Anne, you have not read all of Jane Austen's novels yet? What? And you call yourself a fan? I have actually read all of her novels, all of her full-length novels. So what I put on my list in my reading journal, I also added Lady Susan, Sanditon, and the Watsons, which are her unfinished / fragment novels. And I put them, I also even put on this list her letters, which I have read as well. So I am pretty sure that I have read each of those books. Those, I think they were like Lady Susan, I believe she wrote when she was very young. The others, I'm not, one of them was unfinished at her death, Sanditon, and I'm not sure what the story is with the Watsons, to be honest. But anyway, those three, I think that I have read. Sanditon, I kind of vaguely remember. Lady Susan, I vaguely remember, but I couldn't tell you much about either one of them. So I want to read them so that I can remember. Like I do her other novels. If all of her other novels, I could tell you all about them, but those particular three, I don't really even know much about the basic storylines or the characters or anything. So I want to read them again, at least one more time, and just be really like read them. So technically, I have read all of Austen, but before I can officially mark this down in my book and say I did it, I want to be thorough and complete about it, okay? Because Austen is my favorite. We've got to treat her right. So that's what we're gonna do. So that is all I have left for Austen. Next, I have Charles Dickens, who is one of my favorite authors because I just love how he writes. I love his prose. And it's not so much the storylines that stick with me, or I mean, his themes are pretty prominent and worthy themes also, but reading his books is just an experience of enjoyment because I love the way he writes his prose. I love his way with words. It's witty always, it's clever always, and his just unique turns of phrases that just make you think about something or imagine something or see something in a slightly different way than any other author. He just has a really unique approach, and I love it. So he's one of my favorite authors, but as I was making this list, I was only sure that I had read 5 of his novels. I am quite sure that I have read more than that, but you know, back before Goodreads and everything, I wasn't very good at journal keeping, so I didn't keep good track in a journal anywhere of books I was reading. Certainly did not have Goodreads, so who knows? Who knows what I read back in the dark ages? I don't know. But I'm sure I've read some of these. Some of these I know I have not read, like Pickwick Papers, for example. I know I've not read. Martin Chuzzlewit, I know I've not read. David Copperfield, I think I read. I'm not 100% sure. Dombey and Son, I think I read. Not really sure. So, I don't know. So I didn't mark them off because I want to be sure. Okay, we're going to treat Charles Dickens right, okay? So, of the books I have read and remember reading Oliver Twist, Bleak House, Hard Times, Little Dorrit, and Great Expectations. So that leaves quite a few. Also, A Christmas Carol, but I did not put any of his Christmas books on here. So I guess I probably technically should, but I was really just focusing on his regular full-length novels. So the ones I need to read: The Pickwick Papers, Nicholas Nickleby, The Old Curiosity Shop, Barnaby Rudge. My writing is a little messy, but I think it's a U and not an I. Barnaby Rudge. Martin Chuzzlewit, Dombey and Son, David Copperfield, A Tale of Two Cities, Our Mutual Friend, and The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Now, some of these scare me a little bit, so those of you who have read them, because I'm quite sure many of you have read a lot of these, tell me that I don't need to be scared of it, okay? The ones I'm a little scared of, either because of length or obscurity or whatever, would be The Pickwick Papers and David Copperfield. I don't know why, I don't know. And Tale of Two Cities. All of those are kind of like, a little scary. I don't know if I want to read them. I apologize, by the way, if you hear my dishwasher. It's pretty noisy today. Anyways, which one will I most likely pick up next? I'm gonna say probably Nicholas Nickleby, because that has been one I've been wanting to tackle for a while and I just haven't. So that's probably the next one that I will read. I think I have a copy of Dombey and Son, so I could get to that one also. The other ones, I don't know, we'll see. Like I said, this is just an eventual goal, not trying to do it this year or next year or whenever, just gonna be working on this steadily, plugging away at it. So, but Nicholas Nickleby probably be the next one that I pick up and read. And then, next author is actually 3 authors, or more, as the case may be, and that is the Bronte family. And I have read all of the actual novels by the Brontes. So this is another one where I have read to zero, technically speaking. However, I have not finished all of the poetry by the 3 sisters. I have started, but not finished. And I wanted to read, and so I put it on this list, also the poetry by their brother and their father, which is available at least in a digital format. I don't know if, it's probably the actual physical copies are nigh to impossible to find and probably also expensive, but digital copies are available of those. So I would like to read those. I also would like to read their actual juvenilia. I have a book here of The Glass Town and Other Stories, Rhodopolis, I think, by Charlotte Bronte, and that's the book that I have in mind. Once I read that, then I will consider that goal accomplished. I have read a graphic novel version, but it kind of was like playing off of them. It wasn't actually Charlotte's writing or any of the siblings writing there. So I have a few extraneous things that I need to read in order for me to consider the Brontes complete. But I'm getting there. All right, so the next author that I have here is Lucy Maud Montgomery. And when I made this book, I think I mentioned in my journal video that I didn't read as much of Lucy Maud Montgomery as I thought, but also it could be I just don't remember. I vaguely remember when I was younger, because that's the thing. I would have been like a teenager when I read some of these, and it's just so far back. and they didn't stick out enough for me. Like I remember the cover of Jane of Lantern Hill, so I feel like I read that one. And I feel like I started the Emily series. And also Pat of Silverbush and the Blue Castle, those covers look familiar to me too. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I read them. It just, like, there's like a vague memory that I think I did. But once again, I want to be able to, you know, remember the story and know what I'm talking about when I say, oh yeah, I read Emily of New Moon or whatever. You know, I want to be able to know what I'm talking about. So I have read the entire Anne series and the Story Girl series. There's 2 or 3 books about the Story Girl. I have read those. So I still need to read the Emily series, which I believe is a trilogy. I need to read the Blue Castle, which is a standalone, Jane of Lantern Hill, and then I think Pat of Silverbush and Mistress Pat are a duology. And I need to read A Tangled Web. And then Kameni of the Orchard is another standalone novel. The rest of these, I think, are all like short story collections. And again, some of these I may have read. Like I think I read Chronicles of Avonlea, but maybe not. Anyway, so those are all of those short story collections would be Chronicles of Avonlea, Further Chronicles of Avonlea, Along the Shore, Magic from Marigold. I don't know if that's a standalone novel or a collection. So if you know, let me know. The Road to Yesterday, I might have read that one. And Akin to Anne, Among the Shadows. And I also want to read the selected journals of Lucy Maud Montgomery. I read a biography about her earlier in, well, almost a year ago now. I read it in February, March of 2023. And it was very good. And it was referenced her journals heavily. But I would like to read her actual journals in order to be able to finish up this list. What will I start next with Lucy Maud Montgomery? That's a good question. I'm kind of torn because I really want to read the Emily series. I know Chantel just finished it and she wasn't very happy with how it ended. And other people have expressed the same thing, but you know, I want to read it eventually anyway, regardless of that. So I don't know, maybe the Emily series or some of the short story collections that reference characters I already know, like Chronicles of Avonlea or Further Chronicles of Avonlea. But I'm also in the process of rereading her Anne series, so I may not get to any of those until I'm done with that. And now that I have the full entire set, which I mentioned about in a previous video, I can read all of them. So, probably won't get to those for a while. All right, let's see. Sorry, flipping through my journal here. Just a couple more. The next one is Elizabeth Gaskell. I have a page of all of the books by Elizabeth Gaskell I would like to read, and the ones that I have read. I thought I was only like 2 away from, or 1 really, of finishing her full-length novels. And that's still probably true, but then I just recently discovered she has this whole honking list of novellas and some that are like kind of close to novels. Anyway, there was a whole bunch more. So I wasn't anywhere near as close as I thought. So have a lot more work cut out for me with Elizabeth Gaskell. And also I feel like some of the ones I read so long ago, I need to reread them again already. So the ones I have read by Elizabeth Gaskell are Mary Barton, Cranford, North and South, A Dark Night's Work. I read this past October or November, and Wives and Daughters, which I read. Actually, I think that was ended up being that was 22. I read Wives and Daughters, and The Moorland Cottage, which was a shorter story, novella probably, and then also her biography of the life of Charlotte Bronte. I have read. And as far as full-length novels, Ruth, I have not read, or Sylvia's Lovers. The rest of these I think are shorter books, and she has some besides that, but these are the ones that are the most highly rated that I am particularly interested in reading. And then I will have considered myself. I mean, honestly, I think, you know, once I've read her full-length novels, that's pretty good. But these are some others that I want to add to the list to have a well-rounded Gaskell reading experience. So Ruth, My Lady Ludlow, Sylvia's Lovers, Mr. Harrison's Confessions, Lizzie Lee, Round the Sofa, Lois the Witch, Cousin Phyllis, and The Grey Woman and Other Tales, which is a collection of shorter stories. Of these, I think probably Ruth will be the next one. That's been on my TBR for a while now. I just haven't gotten to it. So I have it on my Kindle, I think. So I will probably read Ruth next. I think I'm actually looking forward to that one. I think I will really like it. I just haven't done it yet. So that is all the Gaskell I have read and want to read. And I have one more list in my journal, and that is Shakespeare comedies. So I didn't put all of his plays yet. I will. I will add pages for his tragedies and histories, whatever. But this is the page of his comedies, which I kind of combined comedies and romances that were, you know, applicable. So different people like differentiate his plays differently. So I kind of combined a couple of different kinds of lists that I saw online to come up with my list. So I have read, and again, I'm sure I've read more than these, but these are the ones I know for sure. As You Like It, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, which I really liked. I think I read that a year ago this past January. So January 2022. And I unknowingly read it at the perfect time of year. Like, it was the first book I read that year, and I read it during the 12 days of Christmas, and it's 12th night. It's about, the story begins on the 12th night of Christmas. Anyway, side note, has nothing to do with anything. And then Much Ado About Nothing, which I reread this past year, which is probably my favorite Shakespeare. And then Taming of the Shrew and Winter's Tale, which I read a few years ago, and I really liked that one. And I guess it's a comedy. I didn't realize it was a comedy, but it was in the list of comedies. So anyways, I didn't think it was as funny as some of his other ones, but maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. Anyway, other ones that I want to read and have not yet are All's Well That Ends Well, which I may have read. I just don't know. And The Comedy of Errors, Cymbeline, Love's Labour's Lost, Measure for Measure, The Merry Wives of Windsor, The Merchants of Venice, and Two Gentlemen of Verona. So those are the ones that I want to read. The one I probably will start with, I don't know. Probably All's Well That Ends Well. Probably what I'll start with. So I haven't made the list in my journal yet, but I do want to read all of Shakespeare's work. So I want to get completely to zero with Shakespeare, but I'm starting with the comedies, because honestly, the others scare me a little bit. So, and then I want to, there are a couple of other authors that I know that once I'm closer to zero or have hit zero on some of these, I will add more pages in this journal, or, you know, the next journal that I start, of some more authors that I want to read to zero. I was thinking I wanted to read Thomas Hardy to zero, but then I've heard some things about a couple of the books, and I just wonder, how much it's worth it to set a goal like that. What are your thoughts? Because the books that I have read by him have been a little bit hit or miss for me. Some I hated and some I loved. And it seems like that's pretty much people's responses to most of Thomas Hardy. But I have already read several Thomas Hardy, so should I read him to zero? That's a good question. Louisa May Alcott is another one that I have gotten really close to reading all of her major novels. I've read Little Women and parts 1 and 2, sometimes part 2 is called Good Wives. And Little Men, and Joe's Boys, and Jack and Jill, which I loved and I want to reread. An Old Fashioned Girl, 8 Cousins, I think I read. And Rose and Bloom, I think I read, but I'm not 100% sure about that. She doesn't have many other full-length works that I'm aware of that she published as Louisa May Alcott. If I'm missing some, let me know. So I've pretty much read her to zero. So I need to add that list to my journal, and then make sure I finish those. But also in recent years, they have discovered her pen name, or I think she had more than one. And so there are more books that she wrote that are out there available to read. So I probably would make like a separate list of those that she wrote with a pseudonym, because those were more like adventure type stories and a very different genre from her kind of children's literature that most of us are familiar with by that name, Louisa May Alcott. So that's another author that I would add to the list of one that I would want to read to zero for sure. C.S. Lewis, but that gets kind of tricky because he has I guess I would make a couple of separate lists, and one be all of his fiction, and then one be all of his like full-length nonfiction. But there are a lot of books that are like essay collections by him and not necessarily just like books. So I have to think a little bit about how I would compile that list exactly. As far as fiction goes, I've read some of the Narnia series. I haven't finished it, but I've read like 3 or 4 of the Narnia series. I have read what's it called? Till We Have Faces. I read Till We Have Faces. I've read The Great Divorce. I've read the Screwtape Letters. I have not read his science fiction series. Am I forgetting any of his fiction novels? So that one I would be pretty close to, I think, having read all of him. But then I have not come close to reading all of his nonfiction. I've read a couple of those. Mere Christianity I have read, and there's another one I read the past year or two, but I can't remember now what it was. But anyway, so I have read some of his nonfiction, but not much. So I have a ways to go with that. So those are the authors that right now I definitely want to read everything that they wrote that I can. And I will be adding more to that list as I finish these ones up. I have a few other names in mind, but these are the big ones that I feel are really important, at least to me, but I think in the grand scheme of things, important authors. So I definitely want to read all of their works and finish their entire list, and then I will add to that and add some more. So it's a constantly evolving goal that will keep pushing me forward, but I think it will also give me some direction and help shape my reading and my choices when, you know, trying to find books to fit different prompts or what I want to read next month or whatever. It will help me to decide which books I want to read and give me something to work towards. And if you have any suggestions for me as far as other authors that I didn't mention that you think it would be important to read all of their works, let me know in the comments. Or also, I know that some of you have, I'm sure, have read several classic authors to zero. So let me know which ones you have and which ones that you think are worth it to read everything that they wrote. And do you work systematically through an author's works, or do you just kind of pick them up randomly, and if you like it, you like it, you don't, you don't? And you may or may not ever read another book by that author again. Tell me what you think. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I will see you next time. Bye.